right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Heidi Musser, and I'm the Associate Director, Graduate Financial Aid and Awards in Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. We refer to this as GSPA. And I'd like to welcome you all to this live session for Funding Your Graduate Education. In today's presentation, I will provide information regarding both internal and external funding, financial need funding, support for applying for major scholarships, how you receive your funding, as well as a little bit of information on OSAP and loans. Please note that this presentation is being recorded and will be available on our website within a few days in case you wish to revisit any of the content presented here today. Any website links that we add to the chat will also be posted on our website for reference. And if you require closed captioning, please click on the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Miranda Bellotta, Laura Frazee, and Elena Machado, who are currently behind the scenes and will be responding to questions that come in through during the presentation. So while I'm presenting, you are encouraged to ask any administrative related questions about graduate funding that you may have by typing the question in the live Q&A section shown in the bottom center of your screen. Your question will either be answered live or directly by one of my team members. And although I am hoping that many of your questions will be addressed during the webinar, at the end of the presentation, we will take time to address as many questions as we can that have come in so that the entire audience can benefit. If we run out of time and your question has not been answered or you have follow-up questions, we will be having a virtual live chat session on November 2nd from 10 to 12, where my team and I will be pleased to assist you. You're also encouraged to reach out to your department coordinator or graduate officer or associate chair or your supervisor for assistance. Miranda, if you can add those links to the grad coordinators and grad officers in the chat, that would be great. Thank you. And hopefully you took the opportunity to watch our 6-minute video on demystifying funding prior to joining us. So some of what I discussed will ring a bell. And if you haven't seen it yet, check it out on our website. We would appreciate your understanding that a lot of information will be shared today. And although we are subject matter experts, sometimes nerves can come into play during a live presentation and an inaccurate detail could unintentionally be conveyed, especially during the Q&A period. As such, I encourage you to rewatch the video, but also rely on our websites as the primary source of information. And finally, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each of the Grand River. Our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, and community building, and is centralized within the Office of Indigenous Relations. All right, so without further delay, let's dive in. So the Graduate Awards team in GSPA works closely with departments and faculties to advertise, adjudicate, and administer a variety of internal and external awards, including the scholarship competitions I'll be speaking about a little bit later in the presentation. We work closely with external government agencies to manage major scholarship competitions and in turn provide direction to our department and faculty colleagues and to current and prospective graduate students regarding scholarship eligibility and the application processes. We also adjudicate and make decisions on internal award applications that require an assessment of a student's budget. So we look at the income versus the expenses in order to determine if the student has financial need. My team is also responsible for managing the payment of awards through Quest, which is our student system, and applying it to the student's account. So throughout this presentation, you'll hear me refer to awards, scholarships, bursaries, and wonder what the difference between them is. So I'm just going to take a moment to quickly explain that. We use the word award often as an umbrella expression that encompasses a variety of funding. But specifically, an award is something that is normally used for funding that's given based on financial need component, as well as criteria such as leadership, community involvement, or merit. A bursary is something that is given based primarily on financial need, while a scholarship is given primarily on academic merit. So at Waterloo, we provide minimum guaranteed funding for doctoral students who are in good academic standing for the first 4 years, so the first 12 terms of full-time registration. Minimum funding is reviewed annually, and any annual increase applies to both new or incoming and current eligible doctoral students. Our current minimum funding is just under $26,000 per year, but many programs offer more than this. And this minimum funding is given regardless of citizenship status. Okay, so if your program offers minimum funding support, you're going to get that as long as you're within the term limits and regardless of your citizenship. If you're planning to apply for a master's program, funding may or may not be provided. It depends on the program you are applying for admission to. So for master's students in thesis-based programs, we recommend that departments provide a minimum of $12,000 for the first year of full-time registration. Many departments give much more than that, so it's best to speak with the department coordinator for specifics. It's very important that you recognize and appreciate that graduate studies is a big financial commitment. You are encouraged to make an informed decision at the time when you are considering an offer of admission. There are many resources available to assist you financially during your grad program, but institutional funding may not be sufficient. So you are strongly encouraged to have sufficient personal financial resources, including any savings that you have, loans from government, banks, private lenders, family or friends, any co-op jobs that you've had or part-time employment, so that would also be used to support the cost of tuition, fees, and living expenses for your program, especially if you're not receiving any funding from your department, which is something that you will know and be aware of when you are admitted to the program. If you are interested in finding out what the admission requirements and estimated program costs are for the program you are interested in applying to, I encourage you to visit our website under Future Students and then Programs, and Miranda is providing the link to that in the chat. We also have a webpage with approximate living costs that you are also encouraged to check out, and you can navigate to this from our Future Students webpage under Funding Graduate School. So, internal funding. As I mentioned, when you're admitted to a program, your offer of admission letter will provide details regarding any department funding you may be offered. That funding will normally be comprised of internal awards that do not require an application, as well as a teaching assistantship and/or research assistantship. There can also be other funding available through donor support that may or may not require an application. Also, as I mentioned, minimum funding is normally only provided to eligible students in research-based programs. Limited funding is available to students in course-based programs, but if eligible, you could apply for OGS or QE2 GSST. And providing there's a significant research component in the program, a student in a course-based master's program could apply for a tri-agency CGSM scholarship. So don't worry, I'm going to cover these scholarships a little bit later in the presentation. Because graduate programs can vary in the amount and type of funding they provide, if you have specific questions about what funding you may or could be receiving, or if you're interested in the application process and deadlines for applying for TA or RA positions, it is best to speak with your department graduate coordinator. So in case you're wondering what a TA or RA is, I'm just going to take a moment to explain. A TA is a teaching assistantship. This is a position held by students to assist faculty members with instructional responsibilities. So in other words, you might be asked to teach a class, mark papers, hold drop-in sessions to help students and whatnot. An RA is a research assistantship, which is a position you would hold to perform research duties for a faculty member. In other words, the research you'd be doing would be outside the scope of your own research that you would be doing towards your thesis. It differs from a graduate research studentship, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. And unlike scholarships or awards, these positions are paid as salary on a monthly basis through payroll. Because a TA or RA may be part of your minimum funding, and it often is, if you decline the opportunity, it will likely not be replaced with a scholarship. If, however, a TA or RA is offered to you in a term that doesn't work for you, or it's a course that requires more attention than you can afford given other demands of your program, you may be able to make special arrangements with your department to do the TA in a later term. Another important thing to keep in mind is that if you receive a TA or RA along with a scholarship within the same term, the scholarship will be paid once during that term, while the TA or RA is paid on the last Friday of each month. So you just need to make sure that you are budgeting accordingly. So a GRS, or a graduate research studentship, is different from the GRA I spoke about in the last slide, because the GRS directly supports you in a research-based program. It is financial support that is often paid via the supervisor's research grant and is used to support you while you are conducting your own research towards your thesis. It is paid as a scholarship on a termly basis. And I've just seen something come up in the chat where some people may find that the links aren't working in the chat. Please be aware that a whole list of links that we are sharing out will be posted on our website, along with the recording of this presentation after, okay? So international funding. We often get asked what sort of funding opportunities are available for international graduate students. And a couple I just want to highlight today are the International Doctoral Student Award, or the IDSA for short, and the International Masters Award of Excellence, or the IMA as we call it. The IDSA is available automatically to eligible international doctoral students each term without the need for an application, and is not part of your minimum funding. The number of terms you receive an IDSA is dependent upon how you were admitted to the doctoral program. The value is normally equivalent to the difference between full-time domestic and full-time international doctoral tuition. And I encourage you to just visit the IDSA website for full details. The IMA is available to eligible international students registered in a master's program. It is normally only given to students in research-based programs, but a department may award it to students in a course-based program if they choose and if they have sufficient allocation to do so. Faculties are given an allocation of awards, and they make the selection based on your application for admission to the program. So there's nothing you need to do. There's no special award application that you need to complete. You're just automatically considered. If you are interested, there are some other international funding opportunities listed on our website that I encourage you to review. Part of being a graduate student in a research-based program is actually sharing your research, explaining to others what it is that you are doing that is innovative and inspiring. And we do have funding up to $500 available on a first-come, first-served basis each term, as budget allows, to students who attend and present their research at an academic conference. This funding is supported jointly through our office and the Graduate Studies Endowment Fund. Now, GSEF, I just want to mention, was created in 2001 or in 2002 by a graduate student referendum to provide some funding opportunities and help improve the graduate student experience. As part of your graduate tuition and fees, there's currently a $20 fee that goes to support GSEF initiatives, one of which is funding to support this particular award. And if you're interested in learning more about GSEF, please visit their website, which will be in the chat. In this next set of slides, I'll be speaking about some programs available based on financial assessment. So at Waterloo, we are fortunate to have various bursaries available to those who have demonstrated financial need. And for these next set of awards, an assessment is done based on a specific award application that you need to complete, and it includes a budget, so your income versus expenses, as well as a written explanation explaining your circumstances and financial plan. It's important to note that these financial assistance programs are simply that. They are meant to assist or supplement your own financial resources. They are not meant as a primary resource to support your entire expenses. It is expected, as I said in the beginning, that when you accepted an offer of admission, you did so with the understanding of what the cost would be, as well as what funding you may or may not be receiving, and any additional personal resources that you have towards your education. Naturally, we do understand that all of you have your own set of circumstances and unexpected situations arise, so we do have needs-based programs available to assist. So this graduate student contingency bursary is a program meant for full-time international graduate students who experience extenuating circumstances that could not reasonably have been predicted or expected after starting your academic program. It is available to provide short-term financial assistance for educational and reasonable living costs. It is not typically provided to students who are within the first year of their program, and there is a limit on the number of times you can receive it. Master's students can receive it one time throughout their program, while doctoral students can receive it twice throughout their program. Oftentimes with doctoral students, it's near the end of their program once their minimum funding has been exhausted, and maybe they've had to go over the time limits of their program. The value varies, but it is restricted to a maximum based on the student situation and program. So we currently give up to $5,000 for PhD and research-based master's students, and up to $2,500 if you are in a course-based master's program. For domestic graduate students, there are full-time and part-time bursaries administered through the Student Awards and Financial Aid Office. This office is separate from Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. These bursaries are meant as a supplement to other resources. So as I said, your savings, any previous employment income, any parental or spousal contributions you have towards your educational costs. And it is expected that you will have applied and qualified for OSAP assistance or assistance through your home province in order to be considered. At Waterloo, we are very fortunate to be able to offer a parental leave bursary that provides up to 2 terms of funding to eligible students who become parents through either birth or adoption. The value of the bursary is based on an assessment of previous income you had during the 3 previous academic terms. And normally the maximum value of the bursary issued is $8,000 for two terms. And on average, we fund about 40 students per year through this program. We also have a daycare bursary available to full-time students to assist with daycare expenses, which can include those incurred through a daycare center, a home daycare, before and after care through schools or camps. And the value is based on your income, expenses, and the number of children that require daycare. We do assess applications on a term-by-term basis for this program. Again, at Waterloo, we are very fortunate to have a Graduate Student Medical Leave Award, which is for research-based master's and doctoral students who need to change their registration status to inactive for medical reasons. You must have been registered full-time for at least 1 academic term and have been in receipt of a financial package from your department in the term immediately prior to going inactive. Medical leave documentation is required, but we do not collect it. You submit it directly to the Accessibility Services Office for assessment. It's completely confidential. We do not find out the medical reason why you need to go inactive. It's just confirmation that your change to inactive status is for medical reasons. Once we find this out, we will assess you and determine if we can offer you this award, which is a maximum one-time award worth $5,000. So interest-free loans are available to registered students if an emergency has arisen and you are waiting on another source of income, such as a scholarship, a TA or RA payment, or any OSAP or provincial loans. This loan is for a short duration. It normally needs to be repaid within 90 days, and the value depends on your situation and the method of repayment. Obviously, there's no deadline for this program since emergencies can arise at any time. And funding is normally available via direct deposit within 3 business days following the approval. So in this next set of slides, I'm going to talk about some of the major external scholarships that we manage on behalf of government agencies. And you can access more information on these next scholarships on the External Awards webpage. So I am going to spend a bit more time on these next set of slides as I want to ensure I'm thoroughly explaining some things I think you should know, especially since there are some deadlines coming up that you need to be aware of in case you're planning to apply this year. The federal and provincial scholarship competitions normally occur in the fall term, with advertising starting as early as June, and the deadlines vary depending on the competition, with results getting released the following spring. So as early as March, we start finding out the results of these competitions. Applications go through several reviews, including at the department and faculty level, as well as an institutional level review, depending on the competition. We strongly encourage that if you are eligible, you should apply for these scholarships, even though you may be receiving guaranteed minimum funding from your department. These scholarships are meritorious, and being successful can demonstrate how competitive you are if you have this on your CV. You are not automatically considered for these types of scholarships. You have to specifically apply for them during the competition cycle. We have noticed actually a decrease in the number of applicants for some of our competitions. So please, as I said, apply for these, because you never know, you're competing against different batch of students, whether it's at the institutional level or if you get forwarded to national competition level, you never know. And so it's really good experience to be applying for these. Some of the tri-agency doctoral scholarships can be taken abroad. So if you're interested in pursuing a doctoral program at an institution abroad, this could be a possibility. Students who choose to study at Waterloo and are successful in the specific major federal and provincial competitions will also receive a President's Graduate Scholarship of at least $5,000. For these competitions, you normally require a minimum first-class average, which is an A- or 80%, in each of the last 2 full-time academic years to be eligible for consideration. An applicant's success can depend on a variety of qualities, including grades, the research proposal or statement of interest, referee assessments, leadership skills, contributions or publications, and other meritorious scholarships that you've held. If you are not yet in a graduate program, so perhaps you're in your last year of undergrad, you should be looking into the eligibility requirements and application processes of these scholarships, because you can apply for the CGSM and OGS or QE2 domestic scholarships before you are even in the graduate program. Okay, so the federal scholarships we most commonly manage are referred to as the tri-agency scholarships. These include the following: CIHR, which is the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, and so that's research related to health sciences. NSERC, which stands for the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. So this includes your STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math. And SSHRC, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. So your arts, social sciences fields. All of these tri-agencies provide funding at both the master's and doctoral levels. And you do need to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada to apply for these, although the Vanier competition, which is the most prestigious of the tri-agency doctoral awards, is also open to international students. Funding values range from $17,500 for 1 year for the master's scholarship to $50,000 per year for a doctoral scholarship, and can be held for up to 4 years depending on the scholarship awarded. Competitions take place in the fall and winter terms, with decisions normally released as early as March. And if you're successful, you can start the scholarship as early as spring term or as late as the next winter term. Institutions receive quotas and can only award or send forward, as appropriate, a limited number of applicants based on the allocations. Awarding decisions reside at the institutional level for master's awards and the national level for doctoral awards. And I just want to throw a couple of stats in here. So to give you an idea of our quotas and the number of applications we receive, for last year's fall 2022 competition, for CIHR Masters, we had a quota of 6 and we received 15 applications. For the CIHR Doctoral, our quota was 3 and we received 20 applications. For NSERC, the Masters competition, our quota was 50 and we received 248 applications. For the doctoral, our quota was 125 and we received 128 applications. So this one in particular, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen a decrease in the number of applications. We would like to see our applicant pool larger than our quota. And so it's really important that you apply. And again, if you're successful, it's something that you can boast about on your CV, tell your friends. And when you're applying for other opportunities in academia or maybe outside of academia, this will really look good to highlight this on your CV. And then for the SSHRC, for the master's competition, our quota last year was 36 and we received 105 applications. And the doctoral quota last year for SSHRC was 38 and we received 100 applications. For this year's doctoral competition, CAHR quota was 4. We received 10 applications. NSERC, our quota was 115. We received 138. And SSHRC, our quota is 39, and we received 93 applications. So if you are planning to start a master's program next year, you are encouraged to consider applying for the CGSM this year. The first deadline coming up is November 17th. This is the deadline by which you need to request your Waterloo transcripts. And the application deadline itself is December 1st. Now with the CGSM, the thing to keep in mind is that you are actually able to identify a maximum of 3 institutions where you want your scholarship application to be considered. So if you are offered the scholarship by all 3 institutions, you can only accept one and it is not transferable. So this is important. Like if you're an undergrad student and you're considering grad school, maybe you have 3 grad schools in mind, maybe Waterloo, Toronto, Western, whatever. So on your CGSM application, if you identify those 3 applications, they become available to each of those institutions in the portal, and we will review your application. But again, if you receive offers from all 3, you can only accept one, and then that automatically declines the other offers. Okay, I know that sounds complicated, but it's all very clear on the website. So the major provincial scholarship we manage the competition for is the Ontario Graduate Scholarship, or OGS, and its close counterpart, the Queen Elizabeth II Graduate Scholarship in Science and Technology. We refer to this as the QE2 for short. The scholarship names are quite long and we use acronyms often. Students apply using the same application, but the QE2 is only available to domestic students in STEM disciplines, doing research programs, while the OGS is available to both domestic and international. The scholarship is valued at up to $5,000 per term for up to 3 terms. Typically, students will hold it for 3 terms. And for this scholarship competition, we typically receive over 1,000 applications. As of the date of this particular presentation, we have not yet received confirmation of the total number of scholarships we can award for the 24-25 competition year. But for the 23-24 competition, our total institutional OGS quota was 169. Of these, 5 were awarded to international students and 2 were reserved for applicants who identified as Canadian Indigenous students. And our quota for the QE2 was 37. So I know if you're an international student, you may think, well, what are my chances if only 5 are awarded institutionally to international students? Again, you never know. Like you may have a lot of accolades, a lot of accomplishments. And so it's important that you apply. It's important that you go through the process of obtaining references, putting together an application. It can work and build your writing skills. So even if there's only 5 given out, you should consider applying for this. The OGS and QE2s are also not transferable. So if you are interested in undertaking graduate studies at a different institution within Ontario, you need to find out what their application process is for the scholarship and adhere to their process and deadlines. At Waterloo, our deadline for students applying for the OGS QE2 is February 1st. And while it is important to apply for these external scholarships, it's important to note that if you are successful in receiving one of them, your department may reduce or adjust any department funding you were offered. So please ensure you discuss this with your department grad coordinator to find out what the impact will or could be. So we realize that applying for these scholarships can be daunting. It is definitely something to consider seriously, as a lot of time and effort are put into applying, from yourself as the applicant, from your referees who write letters of assessment, from department, faculty, institutional selection committee members, and so on. But it's also really rewarding, especially if you're successful. Additionally, if you continue in academia, you'll be applying for research grants. So this is a really great experience to go through. So in order to assist you with applying, we do have the resources available to assist you. For each of the major scholarships, we do have dedicated web pages that contain lots of information pertaining to eligibility, application instructions and processes, checklists or key steps, timelines, and so on. And in the past, we've had different platforms providing an opportunity to share instructions on how to apply for these competitions and answering questions. We used to do in-person presentations. We've done webinar formats to live Q&A sessions in September, where prospective applicants can come and listen to some insider academic advice and ask their scholarship questions. Last month, in fact, our Associate Vice President of GSPA, Jeff Casello, and our Assistant Vice President, Clarence Woodsma, provided a lot of helpful advice from an academic perspective to students interested in applying for these major scholarships. And if you didn't get a chance to see the presentation or want to hear their advice, please check out the video posted on our Scholarship Competition Resources webpage. As an applicant, you are also encouraged to seek feedback on your draft applications from your current faculty supervisor, a faculty member who knows you reasonably well and can offer constructive feedback, the graduate officer or associate chair of your department, any fellow scholarship applicants, so do a peer review, as well as from the Writing and Communication Center. Our colleagues in this office have experience with scholarship applications, and they're available by appointment to offer feedback. Additionally, if you're interested, there are also some sample tri-agency research proposals from successful applicants that can be found in SharePoint. The link to that site can also be found on each of our tri-agency web pages. Please remember that if you are applying for the scholarships, and we certainly hope that you do, don't leave it to the last minute. Give yourself and your reviewers lots of time so that you can submit the best possible application. There's a lot to navigate. Agency websites, our website for timelines, making sure that you don't miss a deadline and make sure that you have all of the material ready to go. So be prepared, okay? We know that you have a lot going on, but it's really important that you give yourself time to go through these processes. And please keep in mind, even if you're not 100% sure if you want to pursue a graduate degree, whether it's your master's or PhD, if you're eligible for scholarships, apply. If you're successful with the scholarship, you can always turn it down if you decide not to pursue a grad degree. So in case you are entering into a program that does not offer funding, we have a few databases referenced on our website that you may wish to review. The first is an internally managed graduate awards database where we post all awards that Waterloo is administratively involved in, from the collection of applications, the selection of recipients and payment of awards, and whatnot. It's a search engine where you can enter specific fields and get results. The others are external databases that we post on our website that include opportunities, many of which are for international students that are available through external firms or agencies. So if you're looking for additional financial resources, I encourage you to take a look at these and see if there's anything you may be eligible for. Okay, so now that I've gone through various funding opportunities and some tips on applying, you likely want to know how you actually receive the money. As I indicated in the beginning of the presentation, my team is responsible for managing the payments of graduate awards that are paid through Quest. The majority of institutional awards, including GRS, are initiated by your department or faculty on a term-by-term basis to our office. Ideally, the paperwork gets submitted by your department or faculty to our office at least 1 month prior to the start of the next term. However, it is not uncommon for paperwork to be received throughout the term as well. Once our office receives the electronic paperwork for awards, the award gets coded to your account in Quest. Now, unless you've made a bank payment to cover your full tuition and fees, scholarships that are paid through Quest are first applied to your tuition and fees, providing that you have arranged your fees through Student Financial Services, which you can do through the submission of a promissory note. If there's a credit balance on your account, then a refund gets released. And I encourage you to review the full details about the payment process and refunding of credits on our website. And as indicated on our website, funding you receive can change because of various reasons. So if you change your enrollment status, so you go from full-time to part-time, or you go inactive or withdraw, your funding might be reduced or canceled. If you change your immigration status, so if you are an international student and you become a permanent resident and you were previously receiving the International Doctoral Student Award, that would be discontinued because you're no longer eligible as a domestic student. If your funding changes, so if you receive certain major awards, as I mentioned before, your department or institutional funding could be adjusted. So again, if you have questions about this particular aspect, I encourage you to contact your department grad coordinator. Okay, so you've heard me mention OSAP earlier in the presentation, and some of you may be wondering what OSAP is. OSAP is the Ontario Student Assistance Program. It's a provincial loan program that provides domestic students who are Ontario residents with assistance based on financial need. It is a loan and needs to be repaid shortly after completion of your program. So if you are an eligible student and are concerned about paying for your upcoming expenses, you should apply for OSAP or your home province for financial aid as soon as possible to avoid any funding delays. There is one there's one online application on the OSAP system that allows you to be considered for any OSAP loans and grants based on your income and expenses for the term for which you are applying for the funding. The grants and loans are released and managed through the Student Awards and Financial Aid Office. And after your assessment comes through, and if you are able to receive both a grant and a loan, you have the option of accepting only the grant portion, which does not need to be repaid. If you need assistance in determining how to report your study period income, please reach out to the lovely folks directly in SAFA. So as I indicated, it is actually the Student Awards and Financial Aid Office that manages OSAP and provincial student loans. So if you have any questions about these loan programs, I encourage you to reach out to them for assistance at the website link on this slide. So that actually concludes the formal part of this presentation. I know it was a lot to digest, but I'm happy to answer any questions that have come in. Miranda, do you have any questions for me at this time?
Hi, Heidi. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was great. I think that you covered a lot of very important information that was really beneficial for everyone attending. I know that Laura and Elena have been in the background fielding questions through the Q&A chat. However, they did save some that we could discuss live because we think that they apply to a lot of people that are attending. So if you're
Great.
ready, I will
Yes,
go through and ask a few questions.
absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So the first one is, must you be admitted into the graduate program before applying for external scholarships?
No, you do not. You should be considering what department and program that you want to be applying for admission to, but and have an application for admission in the queue. So you should have applied for admission, but you don't have to have an offer yet. So because you're depending on the scholarship that you've applied for, you're going to be considered by the department to which you submitted an application for admission. And then they will review that application in conjunction with your application for admission and determine whether, you are a strong enough candidate to be offered admission to the program. So, if, as I mentioned earlier, if you're still an undergraduate student, you should be applying for these scholarships anyway, with the hopes that you will be admitted and have funding as you start your program.
Great, thank you. Okay, we had another question come in that says, how does the tri-agency CGSM scholarship work if someone is applying for admission to more than one university?
Okay, so I did cover this, but just as a reminder, so the CGSM is a tri-agency scholarship. It's an external application portal. So when you go in there, you can identify the institutions where you would like your application reviewed. So if you're thinking of applying at more than one institution within Canada, okay, because this particular scholarship can only be held in Canada, you identify the 3 institutions where you would like your scholarship application to be considered. Then on December 1st, which is the deadline to submit your application, any of the institutions that you identified will get access to your application and be reviewing it. Each institution will probably have their own time frame and process to review the applications, but the results can only be released April 1st, okay? No earlier than April 1st. So if you've applied, you're waiting for the results, you have to wait till April 1st, and then you will see, oh, okay, now I've got a scholarship offer from maybe 2 of the 3 institutions that you identified. So it's up to you whether you want to wait to see if you get an offer from the 3rd one, or whether maybe they've communicated with you already to say, sorry, we're not able to offer you the scholarship. And then you would go ahead and determine which institution's offer you want to accept. And as soon as you do that, it will automatically decline the offers from the other institutions. Does that help? Do you think that helps, Miranda?
I do think that's helpful. Thank you for expanding on that.
Okay.
Actually, we have another question about the CGSM competition. So they're wanting to know if the deadline that's coming up is for students starting their graduate program in 2024. So could you just clarify that a little bit more for them?
Yep. So you're applying like about 8 months in advance for these. So if you are successful in these, the earliest that you could accept the scholarship would be May 1st, 2024. And then the latest would be winter 2025. So you're applying for this for funding for next year. So if your master's program doesn't start until September 2024, then that's when you would start holding the scholarship. You can't start holding it before you're in the program.
Great. Okay, so a student is now asking where they can find help on what details to include in a research proposal for their NSERC scholarship.
Okay, so, well, first of all, there would be instructions on the agency website, but there's also, if you refer to the insider academic advice presentation that I referred to earlier, we did that in September, and professors Jeff Casello and Clarence Woodsma spoke about this. That presentation was recorded. It's on our scholarship resources website. And Jeff, like, he's amazing. He does a great explanation of what to include, and he actually uses like a martini glass sort of association about how you build it out. You start maybe small and then you build it out, including your research methodologies, and then you kind of wrap it up and have your conclusion. So that's a really great resource. And as you're drafting up research proposals as well, regardless of what agency it is, as I mentioned, it's really good to have if you have a current supervisor or a faculty member that you've written a really strong paper for before, and you have maybe a good relationship with them, get them to review it. And the wonderful folks in the Writing Communication Center have they're amazing. They've got great experience with reviewing applications as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And I did put the link for our scholarship resource webpage in the chat, and it will be available online when the presentation's available. And just one other resource I was going to highlight, Heidi, is
Yes.
we actually have sample proposals if anyone's interested in reviewing those. So if you go to our website, this one is asking for NSERC specifically. If you go to our NSERC website, at the bottom, there's a list of resources, and you'll see that we have a SharePoint site where there actually are sample proposals. You just have to sign in with your WADIM credentials. So
that's great. Thanks for including that, Miranda.
Awesome. Okay, so now we have a question about publications. So for new master's students who basically have 0 publications, what should we include and emphasize on to make our applications impactful and to stand out? Because I'm assuming that a really good research proposal may not be enough since the competition is tough.
Yeah, that can be a tricky one. But our committees understand that if you're just starting off, maybe you don't have publications. I think it's also discipline specific. Some programs, you just don't have as many publications as others. So I think including any other contributions, like maybe if you've done a conference, you could include that. Any other leadership or committee experience that you have, you could include that. Anything that's sort of like, post-secondary related. Please don't go back to high school information because that's not as relative, but any committees or leadership involvement that you've had, that can also help draw out some of the qualities in your application. But yeah, Miranda, do you have any other suggestions as well?
No, I think that's great. I think you covered it. As you mentioned, the reviewers understand that where a student is at in their program will reflect how many publications they have. So they do take that into consideration. Okay, so now we have a question regarding research proposals. So who are the readers that we should be targeting in our research proposal? What is their familiarity with the subject matter?
So again, I think it depends on the scholarship, but if there's a department level review, committees are normally comprised of like the graduate officer or associate chair of the department, any other faculty members. Probably, I would say at least there's probably about total of 5, I would say, in the department who are reviewing them. And they may not be experts in your particular field of research. So when you're writing your research, especially if your application requires a lay abstract, make sure it's accessible to a general audience who could understand your research. And when your application, if there's an institutional level review, our committee is comprised of, oh my gosh, it's like 8 people, 8 faculty members, and it's multidisciplinary. So your application, so if you are in biology, your application will be reviewed by the associate dean for the faculty of science, guaranteed. And then there will be another reader assigned to your application who has also some familiarity, or maybe they're in engineering. So we will match those people up who would review your application. Again, they may not have specific expertise in your particular area of research, but they will have some idea. So it's just, I think it's important to to articulate the research that you hope to achieve and that you want to carry out, but also include your methodologies, but also keep it sort of, it's a balance between keeping it general, but also specific to articulate what exactly you want to achieve, but also so that a non-expert could also understand the value of your research.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and as you've suggested, like having their proposal proofread by perhaps their supervisor or their graduate officer who is a little bit more familiar with the research, that's great. But then also reaching out to people in the writing center, they might not be as familiar with your research, but if they can understand it and get a good sense. So it's actually good to have people proofread your proposal that are very familiar and are not as familiar. So that's something
That's
you could do.
great.
Yeah.
It's also important to pay particular attention to the instructions. Don't go over the page limits and
Yeah.
structure it properly and like include some background. Don't have like big blocks of text where it's just so hard to navigate through. Use some headings, break it up a little bit. I mean, we don't want to see a lot of white space either. If you're allowed 2 pages for your research proposal, try and use it up, but just don't scrunch it all in so that it's really hard to decipher what is what. And in some instances, you're allowed to use diagrams if you're, need to demonstrate something, that will help articulate your research. That's fine too, as long as it all stays within the page limits allowed.
Great. Okay, so we have a question that's come in regarding references. So does the status of your referee make a difference for scholarship applications? So for example, getting a reference from a dean versus a reference from a new professor.
Yes and no. It's important that your referee know you. So don't be just going to like the president of the university just because you happen to meet them one time at a conference and, just so that it can say, wow, President Vivek Goel wrote my reference. No, they have to be able to address the criteria of the scholarship that you're applying for. And so, whether it's a new professor, that's fine. If you've been working with them already and they know you well and can address the criteria, that's fine. It's just really important that they write a strong letter for you. It's very sad when we receive what otherwise looks like a strong application, but the references are lackluster. There might not be a lot of content there, or the referee clearly says, I don't know this student well enough to comment on this section. What you should be doing is thinking about who you could ask, look at the criteria of the award, like the evaluation criteria. What's my application going to be reviewed under? And give your prospective referees time to digest, give them a copy of your CV, a draft of your research proposal. Maybe if you don't have that drafted yet, maybe give them a copy of a paper that you wrote for them. So that they can be reminded of who you are and what your qualities and accomplishments are. Because referees are very busy. Obviously, they've met many, many, many students over their careers. So they need to be reminded of who you are. And so like a little activity list of the things that you've achieved would be very helpful.
Yes, and make sure you give them lots of time.
Absolutely.
We often run into situations where students are panicking last minute because you actually cannot submit your application through the online portal unless both of your reference letters have been uploaded. So you do want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on that so that you can submit by the deadline. Okay. We have another question. It's about past experiences and highlighting those in your application. In terms of academic leadership, could you please share a few examples? Does working as a head TA for various graduate courses count as a leadership experience, or volunteering and instructing at a nonprofit organization?
Yeah, those would be actually really good examples. Anything that can demonstrate that you've taken charge, shown initiative, maybe had to direct other people as to, or delegate tasks to them. Anything that you've initiated, some new experience. We've got many committees on campus, and it's not just about that you show up to a meeting once a month and provide a little bit of input. You want to demonstrate that you've taken charge of something. Not to say that being just a committee member is not valuable, it certainly is, but in terms of academic leadership, we want somebody who's like kind of going that next step, whether you've got a department, graduate student association that you're the coordinator of, GSEF, Graduates Student Endowment Fund. We've got a coordinator for that, and these are all students on that board, as well as some staff representatives. But the coordinator of that board is actually a student. So, and then they've got a term of, at least a year. So demonstrating the kinds of things maybe before and after. What was it like before you took that role, and what sort of things did you initiate and that you're proud of that you could highlight?
That's great. Okay. So we have a more general question. Are there any kinds of funding available for course-based masters or professional masters programs?
Okay, so this is really limited. So course-based master's students are not typically offered funding, okay? Tuition can be higher for course-based students. I would direct students who are wondering about that to external databases to see if there's any funding available. There might be bursaries available for temporary assistance, short-term assistance, but really, there really isn't anything. Professional programs, it depends. If you're a research-based professional student, there might be some funding that you get, like a graduate research studentship from your supervisor, but that's something that you should speak to your department about. But typically for course-based master's students, there really is not any funding available.
Okay, great. It looks like we have one more general question, and then we can wrap things up if nothing else comes through. Sure. But is there funding for part-time graduate students?
There may be. That is, again, it depends. It depends on how you were admitted. Were you admitted part-time throughout the whole program? Like, was that your intention? Like, you're just doing this on a part-time basis? Are you doing a PhD on a part-time basis? And is that for medical reasons? So that's something that you should really speak to your department about. Some funding does not specifically state that you need to be full-time or part-time. Often you do. Now, if you are successful in receiving, say, a tri-agency scholarship or an Ontario Graduate Scholarship, and something happens and you need to go part-time, there could be ways, depending on the reason that you are going part-time, that funding could be prorated, so it's reduced in half, but then extended for a longer period of time. So again, if you are thinking of just like doing a master's on a part-time basis, it's best to speak with your department about that.
Great. Yeah. And if you're successful with the one of the tri-agencies, the award holders guide is an excellent resource because it actually lists out the specific reasons that they will allow someone to hold a part-time award. And of course, you could also reach out to any of us in GSPA and we would help you if you needed to change your status.
Absolutely. Thanks, Miranda.
Okay, well, it looks like we've got to all of the questions that came through. So if you want to wrap up, Heidi, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thanks very much for that, Miranda. So I'd just like to thank you all for attending and for all the questions that were asked. We can appreciate that all of this may seem daunting, but there is a team of resources here to support you as you navigate into looking at funding options for graduate studies. I encourage you to check out our website for information. Inquire with the department graduate coordinator in the department that you're interested in undertaking graduate studies, or reach out to our office for assistance. I know that I've mentioned the graduate coordinators numerous times. They are a wealth of resources. They help through the admission process, like with prospective students, the actual application for admission, admitting students, changing registration status, funding, payroll. They're just a wealth of knowledge and we love them to bits. So they are just a really valuable resource. If we couldn't address your questions at today's session, or if there's anything follow-up, please feel free to join us in our virtual live chat on November 2nd from 10 to 12, where my team and I will be pleased to assist you. The link to the live chat can be found on our website. And once again, a recording of this presentation will be posted to our scholarship competition resources webpage within the next few days. So thanks for coming, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye for now.